I'm Isa Suarez in London, and this is CNN.
It was the horrifying moment that shook all who watched it at the start of this weekend's British Grand Prix. The next-gen prodigies at the Wimbledon Tennis Championships. Why, in the end, it was a welcome career first for this young Italian star. CNN World Sport begins right now. Hi there, welcome to CNN World Sport. I'm Patrick Snell. Thanks for joining us tonight. We do start with this weekend's highly dramatic British Grand Prix at Silverstone, where there is so much to get to. Off the top, want to stress it would prove to be a history-defining weekend for Spain's Carlos Sainz, who secures his first ever victory in Formula One. Special moment for him, but we do start with that horrific crash that came right at the beginning of Sunday's race at the iconic racetrack venue. On the injuries, thankfully, with more now from Silverstone. CNN's Amanda Davis now.
A record crowd here at Silverstone today came wanting drama, but not the kind of drama we saw on the opening lap when young Chinese driver Zhou Guanyu skidded off track at the first corner. His car flipped, bounced over this gravel and into the fence. Surely there can be no questions asked anymore about the value of that head protection device, the Halo. Without it, this would have been a very different post-race report. The good news was that Zhou was declared fit and released from the medical centre even before the end of the race. And the 52 laps we got were proper edge-of-the-seat, action-packed stuff, ultimately coming down to a shootout over the final 10 laps. Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz going for it, hammer and tong. In 8 years in Formula One, 150 race starts, Sainz had never before started from pole position. He'd never before won a race, but he stuck his elbows out, he lost the lead, he regained the lead, had his say, and ultimately is now celebrating, finishing on the top step of the podium for the first time. Congratulations. It's been a long time coming. How does that feel?
Thank you, yeah. I knew it would come, it was a matter of time, but this one is definitely came in an even more special manner.
What did you think of over those last 10 laps?
I wanted to end it pretty quickly.
Congratulations. Congratulations, Mattia. How important was that in terms of getting back to winning ways?
Very important, I would say, because after 9 races, 7-2, and there were some races where we were leading and we didn't somehow win at the end of the races. Story of Carlos as well. Very pleased for him because I think well deserved. He made the pole yesterday, he made the victory today.
A lot being made about the decisions you took in terms of your drivers and letting them race. When you look back on that, how important do you think that might be in terms of the championship?
As first, I think we did whatever we could to again, he will have other opportunity for him.
Title race still on?
Still very long. Mercedes back in the fight. We've seen they have been very fast today. That's another key element, but very pleased that they are back, and hopefully they will take off some points to the Red Bull.
It's a result that sees Carlos move up to 4th in the championship standings and has seen Max Verstappen have his lead at the top cut to 34 points after his 7th place finish. His wait for a British Grand Prix victory goes on, but he has still won 5 of the last 7 races, and up next, it's Austria, Red Bull's home race. Amanda Davis, CNN, Silverstone.
Thanks to Amanda there for the team at Silverstone. Next up, we're off to the All England Club. The very latest from Wimbledon is just ahead as we break down a superb contest this Sunday between 2 of the sport's biggest and brightest young stars. Stay with us.
Blueprint, in association with Qatar Airways.
When the COVID wrecking ball hit the industry and grounded all of the aircraft, we saw people in a state of panic about getting on an aircraft again.
Teague, a Seattle-based tech design company, created a device it says can reduce the spread of viruses on board airplanes.
People's attitudes towards public spaces have changed, so we found a way to make it even safer. It's a solution to social distancing. What AirShield delivers is virtual distancing because you're achieving exactly the same outcome but just by manipulating the airflow.
The device fits over the cabin's air supply and redirects exhaled particles from each passenger straight down through the plane's vents, creating what Teague calls an invisible curtain between neighbouring passengers.
We think this is potentially even the revolution in economy that everyone's been waiting for.
Blueprint, in association with Qatar Airways.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessments. Do you now regret that?
It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
Back with an emotional and indeed nostalgic weekend at the Wimbledon Tennis Championships in England. The famed All England Club marking 100 years of its iconic centre court. A plethora of stars and legends of the sport gracing the occasion with their presence. A musical celebration too. A parade of former champs with so much of the focus, of course, on 8-time men's champ Roger Federer. Not playing this year, remember, due to a knee injury. A superb contest playing out earlier Sunday between two of the sport's biggest and brightest young stars. Italy's Jannik Sinner in the end proving too good for teenage Spaniard Carlos Alcaraz, who was seeded 5. The 20-year-old Sinner winning the first 2 sets, but Alcaraz winning the third on a really close-fought tiebreaker before the 10th-seeded Italian closes out the match victory in 4 sets for him. Now, Sinner, who needed 6 match points before finally putting his opponent away, looking good and looking menacing through to the last 8 at Wimbledon for the very first time in his career. Joined now by CNN Sports contributor Ben Rothenberg, who's at Wimbledon for us. Ben, thanks for joining us. You tweeted earlier Sinner had never won a tour-level grass court match before his first-round victory over Stan Wawrinka. You see, I do follow you on social media. Now he's into the last 8. How dangerous is an opponent do you think he really is now? How dangerous has he become at this year's Wimbledon?
Well, he's definitely had a lot of potential. Ever since I first saw him in 2019, I could tell he had a lot of raw gifts and tremendous power. And he didn't play juniors or anything, traditional sort of tennis ladder. He built himself up through minor pro tournaments in Italy and really has come into his own. There were some questions about his sort of durability and endurance in some matches, especially best-of-5 format at Grand Slams. So I think maybe in some ways the grass could wind up being one of his best surfaces, which keeps matches shorter, keeps points shorter, and he looked incredibly impressive today against Carlos Alcaraz, who's gotten a lot more talk as far as young players go this year, winning 2 Masters events. But Sinner really took it to him from the very beginning. And then after letting the 3rd set slip in fairly heartbreaking fashion, Sinner came back and won the 4th pretty impressively. So good mental fortitude there from Jannik Sinner, who's definitely a name to remember for people who haven't seen him yet on tour.
Yeah, he is one impressive young talent, no question about that. Over the weekend, we were royally entertained by the Australian Nick Kyrgios. He's through. He reached the last 16 after winning a feisty encounter with the young Greek player Stefanos Tsitsipas. Kyrgios plays the young American Brandon Nakashima on Monday next. How much do you feel Kyrgios is just pure theatre as opposed to what we all know, also pure undisputed talent, right?
It's both. I mean, that's the thing about Kyrgios that makes him such a conversation topic, is that he is relevant because of how good he is at the sport. He's not just a complete sideshow. He is very much someone who you have to talk about when you're trying to figure out who is the contender at this tournament. In the bottom half, he's in a part of the draw in that quarter where he really can beat anybody. I mean, that was the quarter Matteo Berrettini was in, last year's finalist, but he got COVID and pulled out. There's a lot of space for someone with Kyrgios' gifts to make it through the semifinals and maybe even further if he can stay on track. That's the big if, because the circus swirling around him has never seemed to have quite as many acrobats flying about his head and flying wild in the stadium as it did in that match against Tsitsipas. So how he controls that sort of chaos that's just ambient around him at all times and try to hone it on his tennis is really the sort of $3 million question or whatever the prize money is at Wimbledon here. Because if he can get it all together, he can win this tournament. There's nobody here he can't beat. That's how good he is.
But you just said he can win this tournament, right?
He can. I mean, but will he? He hasn't yet. I mean, he has.
Right,
There's
we'll
reasons
see.
why he keeps falling short in these Grand Slams in his career. He's had the talent all along to find some way to self-sabotage reliably, and we'll see how it goes this week. I think
All
this
right,
might
we'll
be one of
see.
his best chances in a long time.
Yeah, look, a wholly nostalgic Sunday as well at Wimbledon. As I mentioned off the top of the block, we saw the legends such as Roger Federer still recovering from knee surgery. The icon had an interesting quote I want to bring you in on. He said, "I'd like to play one more time." Look, if he can come back and play one more time there, what would that mean not just for him, for all of us, in fact?
Roger Federer, you hear of the roar when he came back onto the center court, just in a suit and tie, not in his match competition, just how beloved he is here, what an icon he remains to the sport. He really is, some orders of magnitude more popular than probably anybody else who's played the sport in my lifetime, certainly, and that really shows here at Wimbledon, maybe more than anywhere else. He's someone who really is a magnet for the sport. It would mean a lot for the fans and for the sport, and for him, clearly, too, if he can come back. He is still rehabbing. He's working on his injury, targeting a comeback at the Laver Cup event he organizes in September this year. So lots and lots of people will be very eager to see Roger Federer give it one more go, even if he is already past 40, an age usually which is far past the finish line for most competitive athletes these days in tennis.
Yeah, but he is truly special, and we'd love to see him back. Ben, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Thanks, mate. Have a good one.
Good to you.
Ahead on World Sport, much more to come. Amid groundbreaking times, this for Polish golf. How history was made this weekend in Ireland. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Summer in Abu Dhabi. It's everything you want, but so much more than you'd expect. It's relaxing days at the pool in water as chilled as your drink. It's bonding with family, but upside down. And even more so, it's burning rubber on an F1 racetrack, roller coasters breaking records. It's seizing the day or owning the night. It's literally drinking 23 karat gold. It's uniquely designed to make it the summer of your dreams. Abu Dhabi has everything you need to summer like you mean it.
This is a really important story. My name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN.
Assalamu alaikum.
Day in, day out, you see the reality of people living through this.
Ничего страшного.
Okay.
This is the front line.
On a human level, you find courage, sacrifice. This is what life is about.
A lot of people are wondering why.
You see the worst of humanity.
Putin might use a nuclear weapon. Absolutely terrifying.
But you also see the best of humanity. My job is to be present.
The human cost is right here.
And to tell these stories.
We're talking about families.
That is the most important thing.
I'm Clarissa Ward in Ukraine. This is CNN.
Welcome back to you. History is made in the world of golf this weekend. Now, you don't know the name, perhaps, Adrian Meronk, but even before today's Irish Open victory, he'd been breaking down barriers. The first Polish golfer to win on the Challenger Tour, the first to play on the European Tour, the first to play in a major. Now he's the first from Poland to own a DP World Tour title, and as we'd shown you over the weekend, Saturday, in fact, in round 3, he made his move with a really hot putter. A really strong finish from the overnight leader when it mattered most at Mount Juliet. They birdied 15, 16, eagled 17 as well, en route to a 6-under 66, sealing victory by 3 shots in the end from the New Zealand golfer Ryan Fox. A really, really special weekend for Polish golf overall.
Yeah, it means a lot. That's, as I said before, that's one of my roles to just grow the game in Poland because it's still quite small, but hopefully this will help a lot. So I'll just keep going. And yeah, hopefully there'll be a lot of new people to the game in Poland.
Let's get to Berlin now. This for the Ladies European Tour, where Sweden's Maja Stark is celebrating after her outlist. A sensational finish at the German Masters. A stunning approach to the last, almost in for eagle. Why didn't that drop? Stark would birdie the last two, while her compatriot Jessica Karlsson would bogey the last two. The 22-year-old Stark wins it by a single shot. Still hasn't dropped. A single shot from Karlsson. Then had this to say about her amazing finish.
I was just so nervous on 18 because I thought that I had no chance of winning it after I messed up on 16, and I just thought, what am I doing? I won't have anything to do with this. And then I managed to finally make a putt on 17, and then I could barely feel my hands on the 18th tee box, but I just said, oh, just go. And then I had a good drive, and then I thought, well, nothing to lose, really.
Nothing to lose indeed. Meantime, US golf great Tiger Woods arriving via helicopter, no less. This to play in Ireland at Adair Manor for the JP McManus Pro-Am charity event as part of his preparations for the forthcoming Open Championship at St Andrews in Scotland. The 15-time major winner hasn't played competitively since limping out after 3 rounds of PGA Championship action back in May. By the way, live golfers Bryson DeChambeau, Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka also expected to play in the event as a warm-up to the Open, which gets underway a week on Thursday at the home of golf. Tiger Woods has landed. Yesterday, we told you all about the remarkable young Dutch cyclist Fabio Jakobsen. This at the famed Tour de France, the 25-year-old winning Saturday's second stage, barely a year after returning to the sport following those really serious injuries at the 2020 Tour of Poland. Well, stage 3 Sunday, seeing Jakobsen recording a 5th-place finish, but it would be another Dutch rider making the headlines here, as Dylan Groenewegen sealing victory by the finest of margins from the Belgian Wout van Aert, who does, well, he just narrowly increases his overall lead on the Maillot Jaune. This now Dylan's first stage win at the Tour de France in 3 years, his 5th Tour victory overall. Well, the Tour de France resumes on Tuesday. Now ahead, the latest from the Women's Africa Cup of Nations for you. But time to catch up on one of the most prestigious events now on the international equestrian calendar. We're also taking to the high seas as well. This in our latest Rolex Minute for you.
The Rolex Grand Prix at CHIO Aachen came to a breathtaking conclusion on Sunday with a surprise winner taking the title. A challenging first 2 rounds saw just 5 combinations qualify for the jump-off. Second to go, 2021 champion Daniel Deusser and Killer Queen took the lead, and back-to-back titles in Aachen looked within reach. But soon after, 2015 Rolex Grand Slam winner Scott Brash crossed the finish line faster, coming in at 39.24 seconds. It came down to the final pairing when German rider Gerrit Nieberg and Ben 431 stunned the crowd and stole victory by just 61 hundredths of a second. This is the first major win for 106th ranked Nieberg.
This bar is impossibly high. Maybe that's why the finest riders keep rising to it. Why they put in years of effort, studying each course, adjusting each stride for the ultimate test. Once they've trodden these prestigious grounds, they know the only way is forward. And time is of the essence. Negotiating this oxer, mastering that plank, overcoming that jump combination with little more than no room for error. That is the beauty of the Grand Slam and the greatness of those who reach for it, however high the bar may be. Welcome to the Rolex Grand Slam of show jumping.
Welcome back to CNN's World Sport. We shine the Spotlight now onto the very latest. This is from the 14th edition of the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, which got underway over the weekend. This, just to reset, talk big picture for you. It's a 12-team tournament that runs until the 23rd of July. It's the first time it's actually been run since 2020 due to the global pandemic. The top 4 teams will automatically qualify for the World Cup, with 2 more teams advancing to the playoffs. And with that in mind, take note that Nigeria are very much the MVPs of this tournament, having won it, get this, 11 out of 13 total tournaments. And this year they're looking to make it a 4th straight title. Who'd bet against them? The host nation Morocco, meantime, up and running with a 1-0 victory on Saturday over debutants Burkina Faso, with the only goal of the match coming just before the 30-minute mark, and a stunning strike it was too from Ghislaine Chebak there, who finds the back of the net. A really well struck and stylish free kick. Look at those celebrations. Morocco's first victory, by the way, in this competition in almost a quarter of a century. Congrats to them on that. Now, before today's match, Senegal's Lionesses of Teranga had only played in 1 Women's Africa Cup of Nations. Not only did they not win any of their 3 matches, but they didn't even manage a single goal. So, plenty of scope for improvement, right? History made then against Uganda when Ndai Diakate stepping up to the spot and slotting home the penalty kick for 1-0 Senegal. And Senegal, well, they wanted to double their advantage, and they do when Uganda giving the ball away cheaply. Nguema Ndiaye finding the back of the net. The offside flag does go up, but VAR confirming the goal will stand. And what teamwork as well on the celebration. Senegal getting their first WAFCON goals and victory. And they currently sit atop the group as well. Congrats to them. Nigeria opening up their title defence Monday against South Africa, with so much of the focus certain to be on history-making Asisat Oshiwala, whose life story really is quite remarkable. To reach this level in the sport from such humble beginnings, extremely inspiring. And now she's focused on giving back, helping girls in her homeland and giving them a chance to live out their own footballing aspirations. With more now, CNN's Alex Klosak.
When I was growing up, I never wore a jersey with a female player's name at the back. When I go home to Nigeria, a lot of people have Barcelona jersey with my name. When I see this thing, I'm just always like smiling, like, wow, it's been quite a journey.
A 4-time African Women's Footballer of the Year, captain of Nigeria, and the first ever African player to win the Women's Champions League, Asisat Oshiwala's rise to the top is the story of triumph over adversity. As an African girl child, you know, they say things like, oh, you're a girl, you're not supposed to be playing football, you're supposed to be at home helping your mother. They see soccer or football as a male-dominated game. So each time I kind of like go to play football or something, I'm always in trouble. Sometimes I don't get to sleep at home. I had to go to my grandmother's place to sleep at night. Back then it wasn't the same, it was different, entirely different orientation. I made them believe that, okay, if they make young kids go after their dreams, there's always something positive to come out of it. And today I think they realize that. Talent and acceptance has brought with it a footballing career that has crisscrossed continents, from Africa to Europe to Asia, and now back to Europe. But all the time never forgetting her roots, and now looking to inspire a new generation of stars.
I had opportunity of playing in the national team, going to the World Cup and all of that, and then I was supposed to be in school as well. So I had to make a choice at this point, because I know everything in Europe is set up, is comfortable for the kids growing up and all of that, but it's not the same for us in Africa. When I see these young girls in Lagos, when I go home with my foundation, I'm just so happy. Sometimes I just sit on the sideline and just start smiling. Like, people's dream is actually coming to life. Like, they're seeing a future. They're seeing the possibility of becoming a professional soccer player. If you look at the future, the next 5, 10, 15 years, it's going to be all about women's soccer, because the men's game, it's like they've got everything already. You can see the fight now. Oh, they want Super League, they want this. They're trying to see what they can bring in now, you know, because like they've done everything already. The money is there, the TV rights is there, everything is there. But when it comes to women's soccer, it's like, okay, whatever you do now with the women's game, it's like new. it's new, and people want to see something new. So imagine the next 10, 15 years, women's soccer is going to be big, and definitely you're going to have some male player and women player on the same level, plus minus.
And it's that passion and progress that Oshoala hopes will spur her on to even bigger and better success.
The spirit of always wanting more, the spirit of not giving up, is one thing that pushes me a lot. This thing is about hard work and believing in your own team, and also trusting your teammates and knowing that you have the same goal. When you have the same goal, then it's easy to achieve big things.
Alex Klosok, CNN.
For our teams at Wimbledon, Silverstone, and of course right here in Atlanta, thank you so much for joining us this weekend. As ever, take care and do stay with CNN. Bye for now.
As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, host of CNN's First Move. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers. Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley, weekdays.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
We're here at the home of one of the FSB team. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
What do you want the world to know?
People are so exhausted. Just gonna help her carry this bag.
Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you.
Now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their stories.
I'm Paulo Sandoval in Bogota, Colombia, and this is CNN.
Connecting Africa in association with Afreximbank.
From food insecurity to rising inflation, from the infrastructure gap to the risks of war, the African business community is coming together at the annual Africa CEO Forum to tackle these critical issues.
Hi, I'm Eleni Jokos in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, and I'll be speaking to top CEOs and business leaders about how boosting intra-Africa trade can help alleviate some of the challenges the continent is facing.
As Africans, we have to take ownership of our development.
We need to create a primary food processing industry in Africa.
Africa is critical for the 21st century. I think this is the starting point.
Abidjan, the economic capital of Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa. This city, famous for its busy seaport, crowded traditional markets and extensive infrastructure, has established itself as an attractive economic and financial hub in the region. Here you will find major international banks and leading multinationals. Today, Abidjan is a destination for thousands of African CEOs and entrepreneurs. They're descending onto the city for the Africa CEO Forum, the largest business conference on the continent, also known as the Davos of Africa, and one of the first in-person events since the pandemic broke out 2 years ago. An opportunity to network and discuss the challenges the continent is facing.
Hello, everyone.
For me, it's a chance to finally get back onto the road to talk business and to see old friends. When the COVID pandemic hit in 2020, the African continent saw its worst recession in more than 50 years. GDP fell by 2.1%, with foreign direct investment and exports taking an even harder hit, plummeting 16% and 8.5% respectively. And as the continent is rebuilding post-pandemic, intra-African trade currently represents around 15% of total trade, could be the big winner.
I think one of the lessons that we've learned from the pandemic is the fact that we need each other as African countries. You know, at some point, some of our businesses were suffering, but some of our businesses were thriving because of the lack of imports elsewhere, from elsewhere in the world. So I think it has proved the fact that we can create and build capacity amongst Africans to trade with each other.
The first shock of COVID, the second one was the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. So definitely in terms of food security, in terms of energy security, and all those stuff we've been discussing all throughout the period, it's sort of important for now that African countries sort of build a capacity system, trading between themselves, to sort of strengthen the resilience.
So from a trade perspective, you can imagine we don't have necessarily the connectivity on trade. So I think by opening that area up, then the continent should be able to expand and trade within itself and create more value.
The future of Africa is for us to export to each other's countries, to manufacture for each other, and not rely on the West.
COVID-19, geopolitical instability and inflation. The past 2 years have put Africa under huge pressure. The hundreds of CEOs and officials that I'm meeting here are heeding the call to find joint solutions to long-standing issues like poverty, food insecurity, the infrastructure gap, and low economic growth.
We've seen an enormous increase in inequality because of the pandemic. And I guess the fear is now with new geopolitical issues that is causing supply chain problems with food as well as energy, what that would mean for inequality on the continent. Could you put that into numbers for us?
I mean, inequality has gotten worse, right? It's interesting, you know, even when we had strong growth, so we talk about Africa rising, the reality is we've had a rising decade. So the middle decade, 2000 to 2010 is when we really rose. The last 10 years have been quite difficult. But even when we were rising as a continent, the number of people living in poverty increased, it didn't decrease, right? And so what's happening is, yes, we're getting growth of 5%, 6%. It's interesting, but in a continent where population is growing at 2.7%, it doesn't give you much wiggle room.
So what is going to move the needle on that? Is there a silver bullet?
I don't think there's a silver bullet, but I think there are a couple of things that we need to get right. One is the problems everywhere, so you need to prioritize where you're going to focus and what are the ones that are really going to move the needle for you. I think where the rubber hits the road and where we failed, generally honest, if we're honest with ourselves as a continent, is execution. How do you track, monitor, course correct, fix what's going on, figure out where you are, and then start to make sure that things are moving in the right direction.
The African private sector is now seen as crucial to unlocking the continent's full potential. Here at the Africa CEO Forum, business leaders are calling for investments in infrastructure, health, finance, energy and housing. All sectors in which the African Finance Corporation, a large multilateral institution that wants to tackle the infrastructure gap, is working on for the post-pandemic recovery of the continent.
I guess the question is now, is the continent, are various African leaders ready to pump in the right amount of money that is required to fill that gap?
So, as Africans, we have to take ownership of our development. And the African Finance Corporation is an example of Africans taking ownership of development and challenges facing the continent. So what we have always needed is private sector participation and the ability to mobilize additional private sector capital for infrastructure investments and for most of the things that we need to happen on the continent. And that is a challenge. We need to have more Africans taking charge, leading the investments, and the world will follow.
I want to talk about the African Continental Free Trade Area. And, there's so much excitement about it. And frankly, we have a show, that we're focusing on sort of the impact. Have you seen an impact? Has it changed the way that you've been able to engage with the players on the continent?
It will provide us an avenue to trade the goods that we produce in Africa. So one of the key focus for AFC is to transform African resources into finished goods. So we have a project in Gabon whereby we're transforming timber into furniture, sawwood, plywood, and veneer, and we want to do that at scale. We have a project in Benin Republic where we're going to transform cotton and cashew into finished products. You must have goods that you can trade within the Continental Free Trade Area. We think that if we can make progress with regional integration, we can make progress with customs, we can make program with visas and travel, then we'll be on the path.
What exactly is economic sovereignty and how can it be achieved? After the break, we discuss that with one of the continent's top industrialists.
For too long, we have waited for hours to convert currencies, days to clear checks, and decades to reach our potential. But now, we can access the power of African free trade in an instant with PAPS, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. Overcome barriers, reduce risks, trade in local currencies, and connect with a single market united across Africa. Be a part of Africa's flourishing free trade today.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
The missile struck right here. What is your interpretation of Putin's intention?
My show brings you the latest news and top newsmakers.
What does President Putin think he has achieved in Ukraine to date?
We just want to say stop to Vladimir Putin.
And we also dive below the headlines to explore vital issues impacting our lives.
What are you looking at for the future with these additional formations that you've talked about, and where? What are the UN and other countries doing for you? Is it enough?
It's crucial we make sense of what's happening.
We are doing this for our very survival.
What do you think a peace or a ceasefire or an end to this looks like?
And fully understand what's at stake.
We have will, we have guts, and we are fighting like hell.
Amanpour, weeknights on CNN.
Tuesday, celebrate with fireworks and music from Pitbull, Maren Morris, Machine Gun Kelly, Journey, Gloria Estefan, T-Pain, the Doobie Brothers, and more. Celebrate the 4th in America, live Tuesday on CNN.
Coronavirus. To get daily news updates in your inbox, sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus, fact versus fiction.
Connecting Africa in association with Afrexim Bank.
Economic sovereignty, being more independent when it comes to producing more goods and services, has been widely discussed here at the Africa CEO Forum.
The questions are how to achieve it, what would the impact be, and what would economic independence really look like?
Africa's trade deficit today sits at $125 billion. If you compare that to, it's sort of 4 times the deficit of Europe, it's 1.5 times the deficit of Asia. And what that means is we just import too many of our products, right? We import 99% of our vaccines, we import 60% of our pharmaceuticals products, we import 71% of the wheat we consume, right? And as such, you know, we're overly dependent on other countries.
Abdul Samad Rabiu is a billionaire industrialist at the helm of Boer Group, a Nigerian conglomerate in food processing and infrastructure. He believes that Africa can finally end its dependency on European and Asian countries. And he told me that the tool to gain economic sovereignty is the African Continental Free Trade Area.
So, African Continental Free Trade Area, what has been the in real terms, impact for your business since it went live? Have you had anything change?
To be honest, yes, we have. The African Continental Free Trade Arrangement is an amazing arrangement. But it needs to actually, we need to all come together to ensure that it works for us to really, you know, enjoy the benefits of the agreement. Of course, we also have challenges as far as infrastructure is concerned, because for the agreement to succeed, you need to also fix infrastructure space. And these are areas like ports, for example. It is more expensive.
Are you still finding it challenging?
We are finding challenges
to use
the ports. I give you an example. It is more expensive to ship goods from Nigeria, say, to Lomé than from Nigeria to Brazil.
Based in Nigeria, Boer is one of the largest conglomerates in Africa. Its business spans across food, cement, real estate, mining and port operations. In 2021, it spun off and listed its food and cement units, obtaining high profits despite economic challenges and the infrastructure gap. And with the AfCFTA allowing tax-free trade on thousands of food items, Rabiu is investing more to achieve independency in the food business, cutting imports from outside the continent and trading more with Africa.
You know, we are also into sugar, and we are building the most advanced sugar plantation in Nigeria today, because we've been importing raw sugar to process in Nigeria. So we started, you know, this plantation about, 3 years ago. And it's a 20,000 hectare, 4-in-1 fully integrated, sugar plantation, with sugar mill, sugar refinery, ethanol, and power plant. We decided to do that because we realized that we are spending a lot of money importing, raw sugar, and sugar is something that, easily could be planted and produced in Nigeria.
So what do you want to invest in other than sugar, right? Are you thinking grains? Are you thinking...
Grains is key. Okay, we are doing, you see, because most of our businesses actually, we are getting a lot of our raw materials locally, like our cement business or mining business. We have 7 plants scattered across Nigeria, and some of these plants are actually within some border towns, which means we can locally sell and also export. So most of those plants are using almost 90 to 95% locally sourced raw materials.
If there's one thing that large and small corporations have proven over the pandemic, is that they are resilient and agile. After the break, how Africa plans to tackle food insecurity.
For too long, we have waited for hours to convert currencies, days to clear checks, and decades to reach our potential. But now, we can access the power of African free trade in an instant with PAPS, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. Overcome barriers, reduce risks, trade in local currencies, and connect with a single market united across Africa. Be a part of Africa's flourishing free trade today.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessment. Do you now regret that?
It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
Connecting Africa in association with Afrexim Bank.
In Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, business leaders and CEOs have gathered to discuss some of the biggest opportunities and challenges for Africa.
Food security is widely talked about here, and with 60% of Africa's population still reliant on agriculture as a source of income, it is absolutely vital.
Yet the continent is a net importer of food. It is 60% of the world's arable land, but imports $35 billion of its food consumption. And according to the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, that number could hit $110 billion by 2025.
When you look at the way we import food on the African continent, you see that we import things like staples, maize, rice, wheat. These are things that can be produced on the African continent, and yet we export unprocessed goods like cocoa, like coffee, like horticulture. So really what we aren't doing today is investing to make sure we can increase the production of key staples on the continent, which are integral to what people eat. We need larger commercial, also economies of scale to make sure that we're making food production in a way that's affordable.
Helping farmers across Africa to become more efficient and productive is the mission of Ikenna Mzewi. This young Nigerian businessman launched his company Relief to industrialize the production of key products like nuts, oil palm and vegetable oil, increasing crop yields and contributing to tackling food insecurity.
So Relief is a supply chain technology company. Basically, it's our job to make sure that fast-moving consumer good companies get the inputs for their products at cheaper prices. And so to do that, we need to create a primary food processing industry in Africa. And so we are creating that network in Africa by creating new pieces of technology that do this primary processing, and also using geospatial software to figure out where the best location for those factories should be to make the value chain more efficient.
Take me through the value chain that you're plugged into right now.
So we've started off in the sustainable oil palm sector. We work with smallholder farmers. So if you look at the vegetable oil market in Nigeria, 80% of the supply comes from about 4 million smallholder farmers, and the other 20% comes from more monoculture, plantation-based oil palm. And so what our company does is we work with smallholder farmers to basically process their nuts into vegetable oil, and we sell it to FMCGs. So to take you on the journey from the farm, it all starts with the palm fruit. So farmers climb palm trees and cut down the palm fruit. They then squeeze the juice out of the palm fruit. Today, smallholder farmers will use like handheld rocks to basically crack open these nuts, which is very time intensive, and it of course ruins the quality of the resulting vegetable oil from that nut. And so at Relief, we invented a nut cracker. My CTO invented it and I gave it a name, so because it cracks nuts, we call it Kraken. It's 200 times faster than a smallholder farmer processing the crops themselves, and it saves farmers the trouble of having to process these crops in a way that reduces value from the value chain.
Do you work with a lot of smallholder farmers that then plug into a wider sort of value chain? How do they get your goods to market?
So I think in general, we've chosen a good crop. Vegetable oil has incredible demand in West Africa, and so Nigeria's vegetable oil market is over $3 billion, and analysts estimate that there's twice as much demand as there is readily available supply. And so the demand is there for the product, and I think the development community is even beginning to re-envision the point that you were just making. If the intervention should be from looking for products that have high demand and then stimulating those value chains, or working from the supply side to increase yields, but maybe not being sure if those yields will be sold. And so our approach at Relief is to really start with strong demand from these FMCGs that need these inputs, and then to help smallholder farmers get access to that market.
The Continental Free Trade Area has been, as a policy, is really interesting, right? Because we want to see more intra-Africa trade. You're focusing on the Nigerian market right now. Do you think that there's a lot more opportunity for the rest of the continent?
There's a ton of opportunity.
And can you tap into it realistically?
Yeah, so when we look at crops, we look at the crops over a multi-country geographical area. We don't just choose Nigerian oil palm. We choose West and Central African oil palm as an investment strategy. And as I mentioned earlier with our business, we use geospatial technology to position these nutcrackers where there is farming activity. And so it's very easy for us to expand and basically say, oh, there's a great location in Ghana where farmers are very productive, but they don't have access to market. Let's put a nutcracker there.
The scars of the pandemic, inflation and conflict, the world is dealing with a plethora of challenges. We ask the question how African businesses can build buffers to protect against exogenous shocks.
too long, we have waited for hours to convert currencies, days to clear checks, and decades to reach our potential. But now, we can access the power of African free trade in an instant with PAPS, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. Overcome barriers, reduce risks, trade in local currencies, and connect with a single market united across Africa. Be a part of Africa's flourishing free trade today.
I would describe One World as compelling, inclusive, and original.
One World with Zain Asher, weeknights on CNN.
Connecting Africa in association with Afrexim Bank.
Inflation, wars, food insecurity have put Africa under stress these past 2 years. Here at the Africa CEO Forum, I'm now preparing to go on stage and discuss with top bankers how the continent can build buffers to protect itself from future global shocks. I think that, if we think about the inflationary impact, we think about the prognosis from the World Bank or the OECD, we're not heading into recession just yet, but it is a scary scenario that we're looking at, and it almost feels Sisyphean. One crisis happens and then we're barely out of, that unprecedented experience, and we're heading into another unknown factor. So given the macroeconomic environment, what are bankers doing right now to change our scenarios?
Those are old problems for Africa. Those issues are old issues. We know that Africa has a limited fiscal space. We know that we need to move up into the value chain in terms of agriculture. We know that we have not been invested that much into agriculture for a long time. All those issues are old issues. The only thing that is new today is this is once again reminding us that we need to act. We need to deal with those issues.
Okay, so what are the action points on that? Because I think that if we had our farmers, right, 20 years ago getting inputs and access to credits that was affordable, maybe we would have be dealing with hardcore multinational commercial farmers as opposed to still commercial farmers.
So you need to provide them financing, indeed.
Yeah.
That's where we can play a role. You need to have that cooperation between private sector and public sector. And you need to invest into infrastructure as well.
Yes, yeah.
Starting by infrastructure, the point here is that investing into infrastructure is going to help Africa to gain into competitiveness. That's the main point. That's what we need to do. If we do that, we add additional funding, then we can begin to have impact on lives of Africans.
Bertrand, welcome. It's so good to have you on. Look, you're the former CFO at the World Bank, and how are you seeing what is going on at the moment?
We are in a deep crisis, let's face it. I mean, we can be positive, etc., but it's very tough. It's tough economically, it's tough socially, it's tough geopolitically, from whatever perspective you take. But I think what is important for the macroeconomic is a long-term perspective, the mid to long-term. How do you prepare for the future? And what gives me hope is that Africa, for the 21st century, is not part of the problem, is probably at the heart of the solution. The demographic issue of the world, the carbon issue. I mean, that's in Africa where you can offset carbon. That's in Africa you can produce the necessary hydrogen that is needed for the transition. That's in Africa you will find the rare earths, etc. So a lot of things will happen in Africa.
Georges, great to have you on. I have to ask you, as an African working at a multinational bank, I'm curious to find out what conversations you have about perceptions of